Thank you for having me.
Happy Friday, everybody. We made it. So, Darcy, one of the first things that I am dying to know is I read that a little birdie named Martha introduced you to your husband?
Yes. Yes. Well,
What's that story there?
Well, so I graduated from Penn, and Martha Stewart was my first job out of college, so which was more than a year ago. And I started when Martha Stewart Living was launching over 25 years ago, and then in '95 we started weddings. And Martha said to me, we want you to work on weddings. I'm like, I'm single, do not have a boyfriend. I do not want to work on weddings. And she said, oh, no, I think you'll like it. Try it. And so it's ended up being all the stuff really that I love. It's about entertaining and food and fashion and jewelry and travel and beauty, and you're part of someone's amazing day. So for a while, she told me I couldn't get married because then I wasn't going to want to do weddings anymore. And then at some point, she's like, you're getting old, you better get married. And she fixed me up with my husband, and she said, oh, I met your husband. And so I was like, oh, this is going to be good. And it was not maybe click right away. And she kept on saying to me, he's your husband, he's your husband. It's so funny you asked this today, because this morning, or yesterday, I was thinking, he's an incredible husband and an incredible father. And part of her selling point to me, not that he needed selling, was what a good father he was going to be. And yesterday, he left for a business trip, and he said, I left advent calendars I got for the kids, put them on the breakfast table, because it's December 1st. I was like, oh my gosh, A, I've created a monster. B, I found my soulmate, and C, Martha Stewart was right. So anyway, we ended up going out, for a couple months and not wanting to tell her, because it's like, what if it didn't work out, then she could be mad at me. And sure enough, as usual, she was right. And, we got married a year later.
I love that. And what was that transition like for you, sort of from livings to wedding? I know you said you were 25 and single.
Right.
Did that change at all as you sort of became engaged, your perception on weddings?
Not really. When I worked at Living, I did everything as everyone does. And when we started Martha Stewart Living, I was the receptionist. I dyed Easter eggs. I, pulled clothes for Martha for the Today Show. It was very, and I think that's one of the nice things about Martha Stewart Weddings is that everyone does a little bit of everything. And even when you're the editor who specializes in jewelry or tabletop, when you actually work on a wedding, it touches everything, again, from fashion to everything else. So I think that, with a lifestyle brand like that, for me, the nice thing is getting to do a little bit of everything.
So speaking of doing a little bit of everything, you are a scrapbooker, you are an illustrator, what don't you do?
Oh, I don't do a lot, trust me. Trust me, it's really embarrassing. Every time I post a table from my house, there are multiple people who comment, who cooked? I was like, thanks. And Martha always says to me, oh, so who cooked your Thanksgiving? I was like, okay, just because you can do everything. I don't do everything at all, but I do like to scrapbook and craft and illustrate, and those are all things that I've done, since I was a kid.
And I read that you have a 50-pound scrapbook at home?
Yes. Fortunately, you didn't ask me to bring it, because sometimes when I do bring it, I need to have a truck with me. But my mom, when we were younger, when we traveled, always had us keep books and keep, business cards and cards from restaurants and everything. And so it's something that I grew up doing, and I've made a scrapbook from every trip, summers abroad, everything. And so when we got married, I couldn't find a book big enough for everything. So I had a scrapbook made. Today there's so many amazing digital scrapbook companies. But, there's something to me that's about keeping the note, the matchbook, it actually is the seating chart printed out. It has emails from people printed out. So 50 pounds. And now I have a lot. I have 3 daughters who are 13, 11, and almost 8. And in the beginning, my 13-year-old has a serious set of scrapbooks. Hopefully my 8-year-old will not watch this when I admit, to an interview how few scrapbooks she actually has. But when I got pregnant with my 3rd daughter, I was like, how am I going to now do 3 sets of scrapbooks? And my husband's like, that is not what you should be thinking. I'm like, but it is.
Gotta get your priorities
now
straight.
My new system is that I do a family scrapbook for all of us, and then I do one that has all their school. They each have a school one and an art one, where I just slip in. There's a company called Graphic Image. I mean, there's great, websites, one called Exposures, and I get mine from Graphic Image, and I get the blank books that you slip stuff into, and then for the ones that I draw, and I get the ones with the regular pages.
And you worked with your mother on this book, Celebrate Everything.
Yes, well, it was a team collaboration of lots of people who helped me, designers, writers, and then also amazing experts. And the fun thing about the wedding business, or the party business in general, is how the collaboration of it. And it's, Peter Callahan, who is a caterer, David Stark, event designer, Shree Berry, who's a stationer, Donna Newman, a photographer, all these experts who have contributed, but then every single thing in the book is sourced. So you can imagine what it was like, because the parties happened over the last 12 years or 13 years. So I'm like, okay, where did I get those dear cookies? So going back to reach out to all Whipped Bake Shop in Philadelphia, all the amazing Etsy vendors, all the different cupcake vendors. So everyone's in it. And then my mother, who has amazing handwriting, was my calligrapher. So she has always, you'll see in the beginning, I have one of the birthday invitations from when I was a little kid. And she did the calligraphy, and she also did the calligraphy in the book.
And I just want to show this book to everybody because, the cover is fantastic. So the second you open this book, I just want to have parties every day now.
Well, thank you, as you should. And I think that the inspiration for the book was that I think the title kind of says it all, Celebrate Everything. And that no matter, for me, it's about the inspiration to just celebrate everything. And the little things, the big things, the milestones, as I said, decorating the breakfast table. We have, son who worked on the book, who is going through some medical stuff, and a friend of ours had a little party for her to celebrate Clean Bill of Health, and so, we made stickers that just on Avery labels that said, I love Lauren because, and, so, it's important to celebrate things. And the other thing that's important is that the thing about parties today and weddings is there is so much out there, and it also can be overwhelming. And the great part of Pinterest and the internet is how much you can see, but sometimes when you're like, oh, I'm having people over Friday for my boyfriend's birthday, it's overwhelming to see all of that. So my hope for the book is that it's just tons and tons of inspiration, and people can really personalize it to the way, that they pick one thing. I have a winter party with snowmen, marshmallows, and snowflakes, and a million things. But even if you just did one and did a winter cocktail, or you played one game where everyone had to tell one thing that people didn't know about them, and you had to guess who it was about. One of my favorite quotes in the book, which is I did not write myself. It is not mine, but it's that. The best things in life are free, and the best things in life aren't things. And I think that really translates to parties too. Yeah. We shot a wedding for Martha Stewart Weddings this weekend. Daisy, who is Martha's makeup artist and is an incredibly talented makeup artist, and we talked about all the details, and then I saw her, and talked to her on the phone the other day, and she said, what was so amazing was having everyone there together, and having our families. And so even though there's all these amazing ideas, the importance when you're having parties of really kind of enjoying it, keeping in mind what it's about. One of my favorite spreads in the book is about a scavenger hunt. So if it's your, 20th birthday, go find 20 of something, or go find, a coin from the year you were born, and things that, again, don't take necessarily, aren't expensive, but are fun.
I love that, and especially that we are in New York City. I know a lot of us, at least I could speak for myself, live in a shoebox. And, do you have any entertaining tips specifically for small spaces or for planning on a budget?
Right. Well, I think that in terms of small spaces, as I said, you focus and you deal with what you have. And first of all, your guest list should accommodate that. But even there's tricks. If you want to have more people have the party expend over a longer period of time, have it be 3 hours instead of 2 hours, and that will spread people out. Anytime you don't have people sit down for a meal, it also makes it easier. I think for me, cocktail parties are my party of choice. Obviously not for my kids. They don't have cocktail parties. But I like cocktail parties because they're easy. You don't have to track exact numbers down. And they can be more flexible with space too, because you don't have to worry about, do you have chairs? Do you have enough glasses? Although speaking of glasses, I think that a good investment is in a inexpensive glass. I have a bunch of stemless tumblers from CB2 and that I bought a while ago. And if you have the space to keep some extra glasses or something like that, then it's actually less expensive than renting them every time.
Yeah. And what about being the best hostess? The hostess with the mostest.
Right. I think for sure the best thing a hostess can do is to think about your guests. I always say it's not just, this is especially true for weddings, is that people say, it's your day, it's your day. It is your day, but it's also all your friends' day and your family and all the people who have, slept to your wedding, especially those destinations. So thinking about, you might have a favorite food, and yes, incorporate it, but, is there something without nuts? Is it, really thinking about everyone, and at the same time realizing you're not going to please everyone, and enjoying it, being organized enough that you can get everything so that come that day or that evening or the day of your wedding, you can just let go. And actually, when we got married, as you can imagine, I was a little detail-oriented about the whole wedding. And on the tables, we were going to have these compotes, some with calories, some with figs. Then in the ketubah, which is the Jewish wedding contract, we had figs painted to look like the La de Rey box, which is our favorite bakery. And last minute, the day before, my florist called me and said, there are no figs in the market. They didn't come in. And I was like, whatever. Whatever, just make, what the palette looks like, as long as it looks good. So whether it's a little cocktail party at home and you were planning on doing something and the cake fell, or it's a big wedding, it's be as organized as you can, but then just let go. Because if people get there and they're like, oh, this is great, and you're like, I know, but the cake fell. No one knows what was supposed to be. They only know what they see. So just go with it. And, at the end of the day, if you don't enjoy it and if you don't have a good time, then it doesn't matter, how pretty the canapes are, because you exude that. And so if you're having fun, your guests will have fun.
Definitely.
Hopefully.
And I'm so glad you brought...
give them a cocktail or two.
Or two, yeah.
Or three.
And I'm really glad you brought that up about sort of just enjoying your day. And, is there anything that you've seen change in the wedding industry from planning to etiquette that has really kind of been that's really bizarre that's a thing now?
Well, I think a lot has changed in terms of the planning. As I mentioned, the internet has major, like, when we started Martha Stewart Weddings, there were not blogs and websites and Pinterest and Instagram. And I think that can be really helpful because of not just inspiration, but finding vendors. I mean, I myself often find someone will comment on my Instagram, and I'll see it's a cookie company. I'll be like, oh, their cookies are cute. And then I'll start following them. And as a bride or so I'm planning a party, if you, are getting married or having a party in Ohio, follow other people who are local, because even if it's not knowing who that florist is, God bless you, even if it's not following who that florist is, if you follow like a local market or a local food store, I find it's a really great way. Well, at the same time, you just have to make sure that, as I said, you, at a certain point, try not to get too overwhelmed by it, because it's like, oh, I love all the white. Oh, no, I like red. Oh, no, I want reindeer. I want snowflakes. So at a certain point when you're planning a party, you can kind of find your inspiration and, try to stick to it and also interpret it yourself. I have on my Pinterest boards a nutcracker party, which is in the book, and it's not, everything's not literal ballerinas, but it was inspired by all the things that remind me of the nutcracker, the angels, the little presents. So at the end of the day, get your inspiration, but make it your own.
I love that. And before we go to audience Q&A, I think you brought some cupcakes for us?
I mean, let's see. Sorry, I couldn't come visit without a little sweet. So I brought Georgetown cupcakes. Georgetown is actually in the book, and they're one of my favorite places to get cupcakes, and especially because I definitely am going to drop the cupcakes if I hold the mic. And
it's live TV, guys.
Exactly. But, and I don't know if you can see, but basically at Georgetown you can, obviously they have a lot of cupcakes, but you can customize them in any way that you want. So I had said to them, oh, can you make when my book comes out? And they really...
Oh, they're not for me?
They're fondant. Yes, of course they're for you. But if you can see, they did a fondant little cover of the book. But then I said, well, how about confetti? Can you make confetti into, I am a nightmare. Then they put some sprinkles. I was like, that looks nice, but how about the spiral confetti? So they're the spiral little fondant, confetti. And so they're all for everyone here, so you guys can celebrate.
They smell amazing.
Yes, yes.
Definitely a nice Friday treat.
But, all those, as I said, all those sources, it's about working with great companies. Obviously, Georgetown Cupcake is a bigger company, but there's so many great big companies and small ones, and there's so many. I always love the ones where you can personalize everything. And today there's a spread in the book that has like all the things you can put a photo on, and whether it's a cookie or a deck of cards or confetti. So, you can see I like confetti.
So as the audience is sort of getting their Friday morning sweets on, I think we'll go to the first question.
Hi.
Thank you for coming. So my question to you is, as you mentioned, planning a wedding can be overwhelming when you're trying to think of all the little things to plan. So my question is, what would you suggest should be the first thing you focus on when planning your wedding?
So the first thing you should focus on is, I would say, getting organized. And before you do, sitting down and having an honest conversation with your partner, or if your families are involved, in kind of what kind of wedding you want to have. Because before you start looking at locations or destinations, you have to think, what, it would be so nice to be in a restaurant and have it be like a cocktail party. This one wedding on Sunday was at Tudo di Giorno downtown in Tribeca, and the bride was she said, I just want it to be a fun cocktail party, relax, so Sunday night. And so I think in the beginning, if you sit down and you know what you want, and sometimes what you want and your parents want is not exactly the same thing, so you have to work together And I think if you do that in the beginning, that's one thing. And then the second thing, before you actually communicate to your vendors and start, picking your flowers, is thinking about all the things about you as a couple that's going to make the wedding and the party, and this is true of any party, personal. And one of my favorite spreads in the book is it's like a checklist. It's shot like a clipboard, and it's like a million trillion questions. That this is a way I've always planned parties. It's like, how'd you meet? Where'd you have your first date? Where'd you have your first kiss? Anyway, without getting too personal. And so I think those kinds of things are going to be the springboard. And saying like, oh, wow, you know what? We really want to bring our backgrounds together, or we should look for a Spanish restaurant, or we should, we really have spent all the time we fell in love as kids in Nantucket. Maybe we should have a destination wedding there. So instead of looking out to get your inspiration, kind of look in. And then there's about a million other things you can do after that.
Hi, Darcy. Hi. Thank you for being here. Thanks for bringing the cupcakes. Can't wait to devour this as soon as I'm done.
Everyone's holding it. Are you guys going to eat them? They're one bite.
After my question, I'm going to devour this. Okay. It looks amazing. So I think in terms of weddings, there's this idea that, there's like this huge price tag attached to a wedding. And I think I read something recently that the average cost of a wedding is at like an all-time high. Right. What suggestions do you have to someone that might not want to necessarily break the bank, but still have a special personal kind of wedding without, spending a ton of money?
Right. Well, budget is, a big part of weddings. And no matter how big or small your wedding is, everyone has a budget. So I would say, there's a bunch of different ways, and again, Martha Stewart Weddings, we have tons of tips always about budget. But, start thinking about, doing it off season, doing it at a different day of the week. Again, on a Sunday afternoon, from 5 to 8 is going to be a lot less expensive than a Saturday night, that's a sit-down dinner. And then, just again, figuring out your priorities. If you really want to have a big group, then maybe like have a breakfast, or something, a midday, where you have a ceremony and you have desserts and you have sparkling wine and you don't do a full bar, versus maybe you want to make it save money by having less people, because the number definitely per person adds up. And, there's also a lot of things that you can DIY, although sometimes DIY does not save you money by the time you buy all the supplies. So I think it's about like kind of picking your priorities, and then also letting go of the things that you don't, that might be expensive. That if a restaurant comes with dessert but doesn't do a cake, can you have them do, some dessert that you put a little topper in and then not get a cake? I hope my friends Sylvia Weinstock and Ron Ben Israel are not watching this. They'd be really mad that I'd be telling people not to get a cake. But, again, for someone else, you could have a super chic wedding and just get a cake and sparkling wine and do it mid-afternoon. And, remember that the decor is a big part of it, and obviously it sets your style. But at the end of the day, what people really remember and what you'll remember is being together and the fact that you're getting married. And so in the process, when you're having to like figure out if you can afford the, no matter what it is, the extra linens or the thing hanging from the ceiling, that's not what the wedding's about.
Definitely. We got married on a Friday afternoon.
Right.
And so that was one way we sort of saved a little bit of money.
Right, because it's easier to negotiate. It's hard for a hotel or a restaurant or a caterer to kind of give you a good break on a night that they could actually sell and get the full amount. But if they're not going to be booked anyway, on an off day, that will help.
Definitely. And we have 2 more questions.
Hi, Darcy. What is your favorite party you've ever thrown, and what made it so special?
Okay, what is my favorite party? I do get asked that question a lot, and that this is not a cop-out answer, but it is hard to pick one. It's like, they're all so different, and I would say my favorite parties in general are the ones for my kids, because there's so much, we have fun doing it together, and one of the parts of the book that I talk about a lot, that I use as a hashtag, is do it together. And going back to the DIY is that, for me, it's about the process of doing it together. And so whether it's like you and your friends who are all having a holiday party next weekend and you're gonna get together to make something, or you're doing something with your mom, your sister, your kids, whoever it is, I think that enjoying that, my kids, like, we have fun. When my daughter, my Pippa, when she was 3, my older ones were like, she loves purple. Let's have a Pippa's purple party for her. I'm like, you're hired. I'm like, you guys, Pippa's birthday's in a month. What are we going to do? I'm putting them to work. But I think the things that are the most personal are the ones that I remember. And when it comes to my favorite wedding, which I get asked all the time, duh. What am I going to say? My own. And not because it was like a week of television on the Martha show, or, it was because it was so personal to me. And, I think that obviously I have the access to amazing vendors and the knowledge of knowing how to do it. But the funny thing is, even when I think about, our wedding, that, like, I just remember, going dress shopping with my mom and doing those things, which are, there was a really nice dessert bar, but the personal stuff stands out the most.
And we have one last question.
Hello. Okay, I have one quick question. Are there any peanuts in the confetti?
Oh, you know what? Let me get back to you. That's the last one. I have to look at Georgetown cupcakes.
And then my second question is, when you first started, I know now you said you're about family and actually participating in the actual events. Right. Did you have any favorite obsessions, like either the table settings or the centerpieces or the invitations? Did you have any favorite obsessions?
You're asking me if I have any favorite obsessions. I'm obviously obsessed with a lot, which is why there's 9 trillion ideas in the book. But I don't know. The things I think for me that are most signature to the parties is I do like sweets, and I feel like if you're ever gonna have sweets, a party, a celebration, a special occasion is the time, and I like to personalize them. I also like to do a lot of things with my artwork, and I do like confetti.
Well, thank you so much for coming, Darcy.
Thank you.
Everyone go buy this book and throw parties and hashtag do it together.
Exactly. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Darcy. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.